Good afternoon. You're watching Businessworld Live. I'm Jes Delos Santos. Let's take a look at how the local bourse closed today, Monday. Okay, as always, we begin with the main index, which today managed to eke out some gains, up by 0.5% to 6,960. According to Rustine Mercado of China Bank Securities, it told us earlier this morning that we should at least expect the market to still trade sideways for the week, with a conclusive breakout from the 7,000 to 7,100 resistance being likely at least in the months ahead, as signs point to a possible turnaround in market sentiment come next year. That, of course, according to him, is due to the fact that there's been a ramping up in local vaccinations and increase in vaccine supply, as well as pre-election high due to higher consumer spending. However, he points to one possible downside here, being that inflation is expected to likely remain elevated in September, but may tame down by year end. The biggest risk to that, according to him, is that it can affect potential hawkish policy moves here from the central bank. Now, from there, let's move on over to our leaders and laggards, wherein I will point your at least attention to our top winner and loser here. Let's kick things off with Robinson's Retail here, climbing to its highest in 4 months, adding more than 5% to 55 pesos and 25 centavos a share. The retailer here, at least now on a 3-day winning streak. On the downside here, you have Aboitiz Power, which is in the red by 3.5%. This is investors continue to pocket gains after the Jared deal, which sells 27% of Aboitiz Power to the Japanese utility firm for $1.5 billion. Aboitiz Power for today closed the session at 30 pesos and 55 centavos a piece. But let's zoom in on another renewable energy player. I'm talking about AC Energy. That's after it jumped, after it bared that its 88 megawatt wind farm venture in Ninh Thuan in Vietnam started operations. That pushes AC Energy's capacity in Vietnam close to 1,000 megawatts, making it the Ayala utility firm's largest market outside the country. Now, this is their second joint project with BIM Group after their 405 megawatt solar project also in Ninh Thuan. Now, ASEN President and CEO Eric Francis said that they are on track to attain 5,000 megawatts by 2025. AC Energy, as you can see right here, ending the day in the positive territory, up 2.6% to 11 pesos and 92 centavos a piece. Lastly, one stock that's been making huge leaps the past sessions is Semirara. According to their chairman, Isidro Consuni, coal prices have already peaked, but it will remain elevated at least until the first half of 2022. He's saying that at current levels, there will be overproduction and then surplus will ensue, bringing down prices. Coal, at least that Semirara produces, is more than doubled from just $50 to $65 in the second quarter. It's now at $110. This shortage of coal in China ahead of the winter season sent coal prices surging. They are expecting revenue from coal to at least increase more than 50% in the fourth quarter. And this, according to them, might spell a pre-pandemic profit for Semirara and DMCI this year. Look at this chart right here, this 4-day chart of Semirara. You'd see here the stock gaining at least 29% over that period. For today alone, it has gained 7.4% to 23 pesos and 95 centavos a share. Now, international travel is slowly returning and a few airlines are soaring above the rest. And here are this year's winners of Skytrax's 2021 World Airline Awards. Here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. Some prominent names in the Philippines, including government officials and tycoons, emerged in the so-called Pandora Papers investigation, which looks into millions of files on offshore accounts leaked from finance providers. This far-reaching investigation by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, or ICIJ Media Consortium, found that more than a dozen heads of state and government around the world have used offshore tax havens to hide assets worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The report found that the purpose of a majority of offshore accounts linked to the Philippines are unknown, while most names of individuals remain a mystery and do not show up in publicly available records and search engines. ICIJ partnered with the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism and Rappler for the local report. It was revealed by PSEI and Rappler that more than 35 Filipino politicians, contractors, bankers, and business professionals are linked to offshore companies. These include Transport Secretary Arthur Tugade, former Comelec Chief Andy Bautista, Chelsea Logistics Chairman Dennis Uy, and business families like the Aboitizes, Gaizanos, Gatchalians, and the Seas. Over 600 journalists from around the world, including those from outfits like The Guardian and The Washington Post, took part in the investigation. Meanwhile, a NEDA official said the government's goal of becoming an upper middle income country will likely be delayed by 3 years due to the pandemic. NEDA Undersecretary Rosemary De Leon said the Philippines is now likely to reach this goal by 2023 from the initial target of end 2020. The World Bank reported that the Philippines remained a lower middle income economy in last year because of the impact of the pandemic. For now, De Leon said that they have already tapped the Asian Development Bank to look into the optimal governance structure to support the country's target transition to an upper middle income economy and eventually into a high income economy. NEDA also noted that they are studying the experiences of neighboring countries that have become high income economies to see how they approach savings and investment, capital markets, digital infrastructure, education, and research in their transition. Now, inflation is likely surge past the Bangko Central's target for September as analysts note a continuous uptick in the prices of food and utilities. A Businessworld poll of 17 analysts yielded a median estimate of 5% for the consumer price index. That's near the low end of the 4.8 to 5.6% estimate earlier given by the BSP. But it realized that would reach the Bangko Central's 2 to 4% target range for the second straight month. It will also be the highest inflation print seen in the country since the 5.1% price acceleration in December 2018. Actual inflation figures for September will be released by the PSEI tomorrow. But BSP Deputy Governor Francisco Daquila said they're already expecting quicker inflation for the year. That's partly due to slower than expected arrival of pork imports. Daquila earlier said the BSP expects inflation to reach 5% in September before returning to the target range by November. Now, shifting gears now as we take a look at how the COVID-19 pandemic is transforming the $380 billion luxury fashion industry. Let's watch this.
2020 was the worst year in the history of modern luxury. Before that, annual revenues for the luxury fashion market topped $380 billion. More than two-thirds of growth was buoyed by the Chinese, at home, but especially as tourists abroad. The lion's share of revenues came from accessories, especially handbags, with designer sneakers catching up. Then, Wuhan, China locked down. COVID hit Europe during the 2020 spring fashion show season. Giorgio Armani live-streamed his show from an empty theater in Milan. But other brands forged on, with shows packed full of fashion insiders. In a global business so interconnected, unforeseen consequences of the pandemic came to light. Delayed weddings led to cancelled embroidery orders out of Paris, threatening the livelihoods of the Karigar artisans of India. Luxury revenues plunged by more than 20%. Companies cut costs, but by the end of 2020, COVID-19 had still devastated industry profitability. Fashion was forced to adapt, using technology to drive creative and business innovation. The fashion business was reimagined through distance selling, online films, and virtual fashion. The luxury industry bounced back, dominated by the mega brands Hermès and Chanel, and the mega groups LVMH, Kering, and Richemont. By the first half of 2021, revenues for some of the biggest names were up as much as 40% on pre-pandemic levels, delivering record profits. From an economic perspective, these super winners are emerging from the pandemic even stronger. Now, there is a reawakening in Paris, the global capital of luxury fashion. It's a historical echo. The last time fashion burst back to life here was after World War II, with the sensation that was Christian Dior's new look. It will take more than a new silhouette to transform the fashion industry now.
Manila Mayor Isko Moreno has filed his certificate of candidacy for president in the 2022 elections on the fourth day of filing. And joining Moreno this morning is his running mate, Dr. Willie Ong, who also filed his COC for vice president. Moreno is among the 14 presidential aspirants who have so far filed their COC since Friday, a list that includes Senator Manny Pacquiao. In a surprise move over the weekend, Senator Bongo filed his COC for vice president after President Duterte announced his retirement from politics. This leaves PDP Laban without a presidential candidate, although the party said it has issued a certificate of nomination and acceptance to another supposed presidential bet, but the unnamed bet declined their nomination. Meanwhile, Mindanao Development Authority Secretary Manny Piñol has resigned from his post to run as senator in the 2022 polls. Former President and ex-House Speaker Gloria Macapagal Arroyo has likewise filed her certificate of candidacy for a comeback at the lower house. And those are the biggest stories this trading day, October 4, 2021. Catch Businessworld Live again tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. for the market open and 3:15 p.m. for the market close. I'm Jes Delos Santos. We are One News. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines.